Hello, everybody. My name is Noah, and today I'll be teaching you the history of the Spanish language. Some things that you should know about the language. The Spanish language we know today has been around for 1500 years. The language has an amazing and complicated history spanning from empire to empire and wars and plagues. Today, Spanish is spoken by 559 million people around the world. Spanish is a Romance language derived from Vulgar Latin. Before the Romans, most of the languages can be traced back to Africa. The Ibero language originated in Africa at some point and made its way to the Iberian Peninsula, hence where the Iberian Peninsula gets its name from. The Iberians came from Africa around 300 BC. Oddly enough, linguistics today agree that the Spanish language does not derive from Liberia. In fact, their language had almost no influence on how modern Spanish looks and sounds today. Before the Romans continued, later tribes with different languages went to live in the peninsula. Some tribes include the Basques, the Linguinians, the Celts, the Phoenicians, and Carthaginians. The tribe's language affected many things about the Spanish language, like suffixes, last names, and even some words. The origins in the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire arrived in the Iberian Peninsula in 218 BC, when they conquered it from the Carthaginians. The Romans then divided their land into provinces and established Latin as their official language. The germination of the language. The Romans fought with the Visigoths, who finally won around the 4th century. The Visigoths spoke a very German type of Latin. The Visigoths' main influence was cultural depression on the peninsula, causing Vulgar Latin, mainly spoken on the peninsula, to develop in isolation during the 5th century. The Latin roots. The Spanish language has gone through a journey of thousands of years to become the language we know today. There are countless cultural influences in the Spanish language, one being Latin. The language uses many rules of grammar from the Latin language. Around 75% of Spanish words have some type of Latin roots. The Reconquest period. The Reconquest period refers to the slow reconquering of present-day Spain from the Moors by the Kingdom of Castile. Castile Spanish was further popularized by poems spread by mouth about heroes in battle. Continued. During the 13th century, King Alfonso X gathered scribes in his courts of Toledo to document many subjects such as astronometry, law, and history, including translations of classical literature into Spanish. You could say King Alfonso was smart to the fact that written language was all the rage. Spanish across the ocean. In the year 1492, Spanish boots went across the ocean, and the Spanish soldiers took Spanish with them and changed history. Even though Spaniards strongly and violently imposed their culture, religion, and relatively new imperial languages, the influence of the indigenous vocabulary on modern Spanish can still be felt today. The colonization of America. The colonies of America in the 15th century was another very important moment in development in the Spanish language. Christopher Columbus arrived in the Caribbean in 1492, and with his arrival he brought the Spanish language and Spanish traditions, including the Catholic religion, with him to the continent, and he was referred to as Hispanicization. Colonizing changes. There were several challenges in the Hispanicization process, but one of the biggest challenges was communication and language. The different language spoken by the locals was very different. At this point, the Catholic Church established schools or places to learn Catholicism in Spanish. The Spanish language began to spread as children and adolescents grew up throughout the 3+ centuries that the Spaniards occupied the territory. Colonization and world adoption. Even though the Spaniards were very strict about Spanish being spoken, there were still a lot of native local words adopted. Castilian Spanish words were often not accurate of many of the new discoveries in the region, and the local words were used to describe them. World adoption continued. Some of these words adopted from the locals include ham rocks, peanuts, sweet potatoes, canoons, iganea, tomato, chili pepper, and sharks. The Royal Spanish Academy. The Royal Spanish Academy was founded in 1713. Its purpose was mainly to standardize the language of Spanish and to fix the voices and vocabularies of the Spanish language with properties, elegance, and purity. It is based in Madrid, Spain. King Philip V grew it under the Crown's protection on October 3rd, 1714, and approved its constitution. The RAE started making rules for the orthography of the Spanish language in 1741. For example, it did help Spanish learners a lot by standardizing the use of accents to denote syllabic streaks and not follow the pronunciation rule. Between 1726 and 1739, it produced its first dictionary. The RAE continues to be an important part of the Spanish language in the present day. The RAE. The Spanish in Latin America. The Spanish colonized brought language to the Americans in 1492. Today, Latin America refers to Spanish that were subjects of Spain, France, and Portuguese imperialism, and therefore still speak a Latin-based language. As a result of Spanish colonization in Latin America and the few other areas of the globe, Spanish is the official language of 20-plus countries. Spanish in the United States. The first Spanish colony in the United States was founded in St. Augustine, Florida, in 1565. Spanish is the historic language in most of the states that were owned once by Mexico. The United States took ownership of these states in the Mexican-American War. Even though English is still the most spoken language in the U.S., Spanish is the second. 78% of Hispanics speak Spanish in their homes. California has the largest Spanish-speaking population in the United States. California's first constitution was published in English and Spanish. Spanish facts. Spanish is the official language in 21 countries. Spanish is the third most used language on the internet today, and the second most studied language in the world. Spanish is the only official language spoken in all 5 continents. Spanish is only considered by some as the number 1 language of the future. Spanish has formal and informal forms, and the language was heavily influenced by the Arabics. I hope you guys enjoyed this history lesson of the language of Spanish.